Oh, hey guys. Didn't see you, which is odd because this is my house. Just working on some video editing. The last video that got put up, it was terrible audio quality, so we're gonna redo it. That's what this is. We're gonna try it out and make sure that we get it working. Here you should see a graphic with a nice title that tells you what's going on. So this is going to be a review for Unit 1, where we talk about the 5 regions of the United States, and where we talk about the regions of North Carolina, and where we get into a little bit of the historical lens piece of things. So stick around and let's get going. First, let's define what a region is. A region is an area that's grouped together because it has similar characteristics to that around it, but those characteristics make it different from the other parts of it. So think of it kind of like fandoms. If you said the word fandom, that's all of them. If you said Doctor Who, that's a small group that's similar to each other, but different from the other fandoms like Supernatural or The Flash or any of the CW shows. So regions are just grouped together. We're going to start with the first region we're going to talk about, which is the West. You see it up here. It's called the West because it's west, okay? It's the furthest west. This region has temperatures that are going to vary wildly depending on what state you're talking about and the season and things like that. You can range from negative temperatures in Alaska to 115 in California. And these states don't seem like they should be grouped together, but they are, because they don't really match any of the other ones out there. So they get grouped together. Now this region is going to make its money through industry, building stuff, making stuff. It's also home to the Silicon Valley industry, computer programs, startups, apps, things like that. It's also home to Hollywood, where they make movies and films and all that fun stuff. So this region does have several ways of making money. Now in Alaska, you're probably not making movies or technology, but there's mining, oil production, things like that. This region geographically is home to the Rocky Mountains, the Mojave Desert, and several plateaus, which are just mountains that don't have peaks. They're kind of flat topped. Okay? So this region's unique from the others because of several of those key factors. Alright guys, let's talk about our next region. The region we're going to talk about next is the Midwest. This region has some very wildly varying temperatures. Not as much as like the West, but it can go from cold, we're talking the teens in the winter, to over, hovering close to hundreds in summer depending on where you're at. Geographically, this area is very unique in the fact that it's just flat. It's a very flat land. Okay, it's filled with the Great Plains, which leads us to the topic of their economy. This area is wonderful for growing things. The temperatures keep it where you can grow things. It's got a decent amount of rainfall, but that flat land makes growing things extremely easy. If you're in one of the major cities up near the Great Lakes, which are up there, you've got like Detroit in Michigan, which was home to the auto industry before cars started being made cheaper elsewhere. Okay, so this region I lost my train of thought. So this region is also home to Tornado Alley because it doesn't have a lot of obstructions in this region for preventing weather formation. So you end up with a lot of weather that's clashing into each other, spinning off tornadoes and sending them right through people's homes and towns. Alright, our third region is the Northeast. Now, the Northeast has temperatures that can vary just like everybody else does. You can't say temperatures are always the same. That's why we have a word climate that describes that difference over time. But the temperatures here can range from very cold in the, low teens or close to zero to in the 70s is a good average temperature. Lately, those temperatures have been rising, but that's kind of about their average temperature. Land forms, we're looking at a lot of Appalachian Mountains, we're looking at a lot of rocky soil, and a lot of land that's capable of farming, but it's going to be difficult to farm because of the rocky terrain. People do farm in New York. That's how New Yorkers lived before the invention of railroads to bring them food. They farmed. It wasn't easy, but it was doable. Now, this area's form of economics, their way of making money, initially started out as industrial. They couldn't farm, so they built stuff. They built a lot of ships in the early 1700s. They built a lot of manufactured goods in that area and shipped it out around the country. Today that does kind of change because we can get products cheaper from overseas, but there is still a heavy industrial base in the Northeast. Alright, so our fourth region of the United States is the Southwest. This region is very hot and dry. This region ranges anywhere between it can get into the 30s and 40s at night in some of the deserts, all the way up to, I think the record right now is 120 plus in Arizona. So it's a hot, dry place. This area is filled with deserts. It's filled with plateaus again because it does butt up right next to the west. It features the major river that flows through this is the Rio Grande. This area is primarily served economically by the oil industry, by livestock farming and production, and a little bit through actual full farming, like growing plants and things like that. But this region is very hot and dry. It's hard to live here. Native Americans did it a long time before settlers ever got here, but it is an incredibly hard region to live in. Alright, we've reached our last region of the United States, the Southeast. This is home. This is where we live. The Southeast starts in Virginia and goes all the way to Florida and goes over west towards Mississippi. Now this part of the country has farming. It has a mountain range that runs through it, and it has coastlines, which give us our biggest chunks of economic advantage. We've got the coastlines for fishing and shipping. Florida is great for shipping, lots of deep ports that it can get in and out of. Farming, the whole area through the Southeast has land that's available for farming. You do have to dodge clay pockets of soil and things like that, but you can farm here. And as far as the mountains go, that gives us a lot of other industries that we can use too. Lumber, mining. There was a gold rush in North Carolina in the 1800s. It didn't pan out or last nearly as long as the one in California, but you can mine stuff here. You can get things out of the ground. This area is also home to swamps. This is one of the parts of the country that's kind of unique in its swampiness. It's got Louisiana and things like that around it that have swamps, but Florida is home to some pretty dense swampy swamps. They got swamps. What else do you want me to say? Temperature wise and climate wise, this area stays pretty warm. We range anywhere from about 40 to 90 degrees temperature wise. It can go up or below that, obviously, but this area, because it is on that coastline and because it does get a lot of weather from the coast, we do get hit with hurricanes quite often. I think I read somewhere that we've been hit with 14 hurricanes since 2001. It's probably more than that, actually, but this region does have some very strong weather. Okay, so we've talked so far about the 5 major regions of the United States. I wanted to hit on real quick that those regions can be further broken down. Some people break the West into the Pacific Northwest, and it gets a little bit more complicated. You can always break things down to the smaller and smaller parts. That's why we go from molecules to atoms to other stuff. But I like to keep it at the big 5 because it's easier to wrap your head around in a lot of different ways. But we're going to move now to North Carolina specifically and talk about the 3 regions that are in North Carolina. Let's start with the most westerly region. That's the mountains. This region lies between Tennessee and the Piedmont. The Piedmont's the next region. We'll get there. Calm down. We'll get there. The mountains do have agriculture because you can't live in the middle of nowhere without being able to produce a food source. But it makes a lot of its money through logging and mining. However, the biggest income earner for the mountains is tourism. It's a beautiful area. You can ski there. People go there to drive the Blue Ridge Parkway and look at the leaves change. You can generally tell those people they're driving real slow and have out-of-state license plates, but they drive through that area for tourism. That's the way that they make money. Now, this region doesn't have a lot of urban areas. As a matter of fact, the most urban area that you can consider up there is going to be Asheville. Asheville's the major city in that region. It's home to a couple of colleges. It's home to a lot of arts and crafts neighborhoods, things like that. But this region is very, very rural. You got to drive to get places. They're kind of spread out. Sometimes they're hard to get to. So you got to kind of expect that when you go to that region. Let's roll on to our second one. This one's the Piedmont. It butts right up, but again, another joke. It butts right up to the mountains, but it extends to the fall line in North Carolina. Now, the Piedmont is called that because the word Piedmont literally means foot of the mountain, because this region's at the foot of the mountains. Now, this region lies, like I said, between the fall line and the mountains, and it's good for farming, but the land here is starting to get more densely packed with clay, which means it's kind of hard to break up, it's kind of hard to get through, so you sometimes have to clean that out to be able to actually plant and grow here. The land is not flat like a plateau, not flat like a plain, but it's kind of rolling gentle hills, not like a mountain where it's, it's clear there's a hill there, but it's kind of rolling gentle mountains. This region is home to banking, it's home to technology, it's home to biomedical research, and it's home to colleges. Education is a big part of North Carolina in this area. We have a lot of colleges. I'll throw a couple pictures up there of the colleges in our area. Ooh, I went to that one. I visited that one. Okay, rolling on. Let's move on to our next region, the coastal plains. Now, I'm going to go ahead and tell you this. The coastal plains can be broken down even further into the coastal plains and the tidewater. The easiest way I like to think of the tidewater, if it touches the ocean, it's tidewater. This area makes a lot of its money through tourism. Duh, it's the beaches. And it makes a lot of money through fishing. These two elements of industry, these two money makers bring money into the coastal plains so that people there can live and survive. When you travel a little bit further in, it goes from the tidewater to what we just kind of call the coast plains. This area has the best amount of land for farming. It's wonderful for it. It's great for it. This area grows extensively it used to grow a lot of tobacco. Laws, regulations, and the fact that it causes cancer have caused people to quit growing so much tobacco. Cotton's grown there, soybeans, wheat, corn. Corn's a big grower. The government subsidized a lot of corn producers, so they got money from the government to make corn. So that's a great aspect there. So all three of these regions are very distinct in the ways that they make money, but they're also unique in their landforms. Mountains with lumber, mining, and tourism roll into the Piedmont with sloping hills, gentle hills that are filled with colleges, research, medical places, biotechnology, all of that stuff, which leads to the coastal plains with farming and tourism and beaches, fishing, those kind of things. All right, guys, let's roll into the historical lenses. These are a weird kind of idea, but I like them because they help shape the way that you look for things. They help shape the way that you look at things. First one we're going to talk about is the historical lens. I think of that real simply. Look at evidence, look at artifacts. That could be photos, writing, music, pieces of crushed pottery, and look at that historically. What was it like then? How did it change to now? Do we have that anymore? Has it changed? Have we gone from the old pick up the receiver and turn the handle phones to cell phones? Historical changes. Another one is economics. Economics is one of my favorite ones to look at because I think it's really interesting. Economics is the study of how people trade resources for goods and services. That might mean I trade you money for a service. I trade you money, you wash my car. Or I trade you money and you help me make dinner. I don't know how people do this. Or It could be, in older societies, a trade system. I give you something, you give me something else. If I grow potatoes, I don't make shoes, because growing potatoes is a lot of work. So in a trade system, I might trade some of my potatoes to the guy that makes shoes so that I have shoes now. Because nobody wants to farm barefoot. That's rough, it's rocky. Yeah. So economics is how people make money. It can also give us a good look into what the culture is like because of where they spend that money too, which leads us into our next lens, cultural. This is where you look at the views, beliefs, and traditions of people to kind of see what they have about them, what's going on in their lives. You can look to see in a lot of cultures that women are considered the caretakers in the home. I'm not saying that's the only role, don't come at me. But a lot of cultures do treat women that way. You can look at some cultures like Native Americans who had women in matriarchal leadership roles as opposed to where it's a male-dominated society. So culture tells us a lot about the views and beliefs. Religion can fall into a cultural analysis. Looking at major religions, you can kind of see some certain similarities between them, which shows us that culturally they have some similarities. They're not exactly the same, but they have some similarities. Going on to the next one, geographical. Geographical is how does the land affect the people, and how do the people affect the land? If somebody moves into an area, they have to have certain things to survive. Water, food, shelter. If you move into an area that doesn't provide you with these three things, you won't survive. People need clean drinking water. That's why it's sometimes hard to survive in a desert. People need shelter. If you live in the mountains, you can get rain, that's your water, and your shelter comes from all the trees you cut down to build things. And food comes from either foraging, finding stuff, that's way old school, growing it, more modern, or hunting it down, which still happens today. And then our last one is, I just forgot, political. I simplify this down to how do groups of people work together to get stuff done. And I think that's the easiest way to think about it, because if you look at our own United States political system, we have two major parties, Democrats and Republicans. These two groups don't always get along, but they're always trying to do things that their supporters want to do. Okay? You have the Democrats pushing their own agenda that their supporters want to get done, so they form a group. You have the Republicans who do the same, and the way the government's supposed to work is that Republicans and Democrats work together to make something happen. Yeah, I don't believe that much anymore either, but that's the way politics are supposed to work. So, you've got your 5 historical lenses that we're going to focus on. Historical, cultural, economical, geographical, political. I had to throw my lenses on. Alright guys, I hope you enjoyed this review for your Unit 1 test. I hope this video turned out a lot better than the last one. I hope you can hear this one a lot better. If you have questions or comments, chances are you're in my class and you've watched this. You have my school email. Feel free to send me a message if you need help with anything. Until next time, see ya.